We were actually approached by a client here in the UAE, firstly, that had purchased property in Sri Lanka and was interested in investing into the country and its opportunities, given its close proximity to the UAE and the growing market that's actually happening there. So actually, Paul, our client for Harding Boutique Hotel, saw that we were there through social media actually, and had been watching our practice and what we'd be doing. So shortly after I returned back from the site visit from the villa that we went to go and site visit for, he contacted us and said, look, I'm interested in what you guys do. I have an interest in Sri Lanka, and I'd like to explore doing a project with you to sort of, explore a new sort of contextual modern boutique hotel influenced by tropical modernism, which was very kind of close to his heart as a kind of an aesthetic and an approach to the architecture from the region. So it was from that we then started to sketch out a few ideas. We brainstormed. It's quite a small, interesting plot. So we had to kind of really think about how we were going to sort of maximize the plot to really create a hospitality experience, so that we can actually elevate the building higher so that you can get views amongst the palm trees and the palm groves around. And he had a fantastic sort of sea frontage, so you got the beach and you got the ocean in front of you. And that's essentially how we further developed that. And since we've been on site a few times and really had to put together a team there locally. The main thing about Sri Lanka for us is its fantastic context. It's got this sort of amazing tropical landscape. It's got a real sort of quite sort of different context to what we've got obviously here in Dubai and the Middle East. Kind of what always really interests me obviously about when we're working in different sort of climates and different geographies is to really understand what it's about. What are the fundamental bases that sort of establish a vernacular in the architecture. So I think when we're working within Sri Lanka, it's obviously extremely green. We've actually got sort of two projects at the moment, both actually on oceanfront property. One that we're actually working on, which actually was our first introduction to Sri Lanka, is actually a private villa which is actually on an elevated peninsula, so it's 20 meters above sea level. So what we really had to understand is the elevation and understand how this is positioned on the land itself. Also, looking at the traditional ways of doing architecture in the region, we considered whether ones we consider with apex roofs to create extra shading over some of the living spaces, so that a lot of the sort of living spaces can be as transparent as possible. So it feels as though you're really connected with the outdoor and you're always engaged with both the landscape and the ocean view, because essentially the beauty of it is the scenery. So the architecture has to really engage with that. And obviously understanding about integrating buildings within the landscape, we have to kind of look with this idea of contextual modernism, and particularly tropical modernism, is this transition between indoor and outdoor. So for example, with the Harding Boutique Hotel, the real key things for us is where we can actually have intermediate spaces that are actually interior and exterior. So as we go through the main staircase, which leads up to the 6 bedrooms as we've got up here, the rooms themselves, where the bedroom and the sitting can be artificially air conditioned because that's a need for tourism, but the actual shower areas and the bathrooms are all exposed, and that's a very traditional vernacular Sri Lankan tradition. And I think people go to these countries to experience what it's like to be living in Sri Lanka. So it's been a thing that we've followed all the way through with the project, so that we're really anticipating the idea that a guest can really engage with the landscape around them. And with this particular project, elevating it up amongst the actual palm trees and the palm groves around it, but also keeping it very clean and crisp, so that you're framing the view that you're looking out upon, out towards the ocean. I think more so coming with the sort of the influence from Geoffrey Bawa and the cleanliness and his understanding of form and function. So a lot of them are kind of working, just on our site pictures, concrete. So it's how to really work well with concrete rather than actually working against it, and to create a very open structure so that we're obviously infilling, whether we're looking at indigenous woods like palm wood to actually clad, which is an indigenous hardwood, and actually sourced from the local palm grove around that, which will sort of get better with age and age well with the actual climate itself, to being able to then create aspects and really responding to the orientation. All the projects that we actually start and work with in Sri Lanka and everywhere actually looks at a more passive design as the fundamental basis. So the orientation of the building sort of from an east-west, with the south aspect having heavily more shaded, but if we've got the view there, we actually have deeper balconies. And that really is understanding the basics of what sort of the tropical modernism movement was, is engaging itself in a contemporary way with the landscape and looking at using materiality that responds and is crafted from the actual space in which we are. I think generally, the age of the big business is changing, whether it'll be in architecture or it'll be any other industry. I think boutique means personal, and it's what people want to have, a personal tailored service. And I think also, time frames and efficiencies. Obviously, a reduced size office has less overheads, and they can actually make a more kind of economical offer to clients like that. And it really does also go back to you find that most boutique practices have born out of a bigger practice. It's a sort of 2 or 3 partners or friends even from university coming together and having an idea, seeing an opportunity, and then pursuing that vision. And I think having that ambition and having that creativity and that drive is what makes it appealing to clients, and that clients see this as that they're going to get a unique, one-to-one, private, kind of like personal service in the design, and also then seeing the project all the way through, and it's connection. I think clients now want to have engagement in their projects. They're a lot more aware about generally design. They're a lot more aware about how they want to live. They want to make sure that you as a practice, as a client, are responding to their needs and so forth. So I think that's been the trend that started a lot with the private client and the kind of the end user, and it's now evolved into sort of the developer side and the residential developers. So clients like our relationship that we built with Ellington Group. So from the very start, as Ellington was started, we were there with their first building project, and they came to us because they saw that there was, we could bring a different design approach, but we also had a professional background. So we understood how the bigger process worked and how the communication across the full consultancy team, the idea of approvals, of getting all the way through from the concept to completion. They were aware and they checked and said, do you understand this? And we do, but they wanted that boutique relationship where we can really sit down and go around the table and talk about the design and so elevate the design as a driving factor, as well as all the commercial elements and everything else integrated.